What's going on, everybody? Zack Rosenblatt here with the latest episode of the No Huddle Show. I'm at NovaCare Complex with Mike Kaye. We just got out of Doug Peterson's press conference a little while ago, and he pretty much put an end to the, it won't end, but he put an end to the Nick Foles-Carson Wentz debate, I guess it's called. There's just been a lot of takes coming in hot from all angles this week. As expected, Nick Foles guided the Eagles to a win over the Rams. He's going to start again against the Texans. There's been a lot of what-if scenarios of what if Nick Foles wins out and they go to the playoffs and they make some noise there. Like, all of a sudden, are you going to consider Nick Foles as your quarterback? No, they're not. Doug Peterson said, Carson Wentz is our starting quarterback. He's our future. We drafted him to be our quarterback for a long time. Nick Foles is the backup. He said all these things.
He did, and we've been very critical of his press conferences as of late. This is exactly what he needed to say.
Yeah, it was about time.
Enough already. I think any person who looks at the logic of the overarching situation, Carson's clearly the guy. Nick Foles might be the most effective backup quarterback of all time in the entire NFL history. But he's still that. He's the backup.
And in Philadelphia, he is the backup.
Yeah. So, and that's forever where he will be. Unless this Carson Wentz thing turns into something bigger than it is.
Yeah, unless he breaks his back or something.
Right. Yeah, if Bane comes out of the comic books and breaks his back,
the funny thing is, even then, I still feel like they'd almost be more likely to just, go and draft somebody, or Nate Sudfeld. Yeah.
Yeah,
for the future, at least, we're saying. But that's a weird hypothetical.
what I think it comes down to, and I've seen this a lot on Twitter, a lot of people are speculating because the team is so quick to gravitate towards Nick whenever he starts. Well, the guy won them a Super Bowl. I mean,
it's natural.
You can talk about the defense, you can talk about Carson leading them to 11-2. Nick Foles, his last two games of the 2017 campaign
are the two best in Eagles history.
Yeah, I mean, enough already with that. But Carson Wentz is the future. I think the guys that gravitate towards Nick are the ones that have been around for a while. You look at Chris Long. He
had a shrine in his locker to Nick Foles yesterday. It was hilarious.
Look at Fletcher Cox. Remember, Fletcher Cox came in with Nick Foles. Chris
Long played with him in the Rams.
At the Rams, there are guys that have known Nick.
Zack Ertz. I mean, he was here when Nick Foles, his great season in 2013, was it?
Yes.
Yeah, that was Ertz's, I believe, rookie year.
Yes. Yeah, it was Chip's first year. Jason Kelsey's been around.
Lane Johnson.
There are guys that have known Nick for longer.
From his first go-around, yeah.
Right. Typically, if you've known somebody for longer than another guy and you've been close friends with them, you're going to back the guy who's been around.
It's not even that they're backing him necessarily, but they're just gravitating towards him, like you said.
And Nick's a guy who comes into press conferences. He does have a presence, whether that's kind of like a
that dude's going to be a motivational speaker. He doesn't have a press conference where he doesn't say something. You're like, oh, that's, I want to go out there and attack the world right now.
And something,
this isn't
a criticism of Carson, but from press conferences and interactions, Nick has a perspective that Carson doesn't. I don't know if that...
Or at least he doesn't, show it to us.
Right. That's fair. Nick has a way with words. He also has a way with leadership. It's easy to buy into him. He's a Super Bowl, MVP. He's also had a 27-2 season. He's done a lot. He's accomplished a lot, and I think people discount that so much because the other side of the coin is, oh my gosh, Nick Foles is the second coming of Joe Montana, all this other stuff. It's somewhere in the middle, and I think fans, players, media, everybody feeds into this thing. You can like both quarterbacks.
You're allowed to, yeah.
Nick Foles can be a really effective clutch quarterback, and Carson Wentz could still be a better quarterback. That's possible.
And the quarterback.
And that's what he is according to Doug Peterson. I think, I wasn't here in the offseason, but I will say that I think that's the best stance Doug's taken on a controversial issue in a really long time for me, just covering this team. And, yeah, Carson's the guy. I mean, it's evident. I don't know how you cannot see that.
A year ago, he was going to win league MVP. Super Bowl MVP is like one game, and it was amazing. But a full season's worth of being the best player in the NFL, like he was voted by his peers the number 2 player in the NFL, or was it 3? I forget.
Three.
I mean, that's insane. After basically 1 3/4 years, and he only had 2 years in the entire league, never played in the playoffs, and they give that poll to everybody in the locker room. Not everybody votes on it, because I saw them giving it out recently to the Eagles locker room.
A lot of practice squad guys.
Yeah, I mean, even those guys. But the fact that like all these players voted, and Carson Wentz, like that just shows you the respect he has around the league. It's just interesting that I don't know. I don't want to say the city of Philadelphia has turned on him, but there's a large chunk of the fan base who are maybe overreacting a little bit to Nick Foles.
I mean,
and it's understandable. I mean, he brought the Super Bowl to Philadelphia. Like, I get it.
But here's the thing, too. You look at it. This city is not patient, and I'll include South Jersey in that. They just won a Super Bowl. It feels like it was a million years ago because people are complaining about Mike Rowe and all this other stuff. They just won the Super Bowl last year. And Groh helped develop Nelson Aguilar into a very good wide receiver. Alshon Jeffrey had a pretty good year. What I'll say is this. Carson Wentz was the best player on the planet from week 3 to week 14 of last season. Period. So, and he's coming off an ACL surgery. I mean, there's... It's just
a lot of things. Yeah.
There's a lot of things. That might be the title of this podcast.
It'd be the title of this season, honestly.
Yeah,
if there was a book about this season, there's so many things that happened this year. They have to make a 30 for 30 about this. Last season was remarkable. This season, so much weird stuff happened.
Especially
if they make the playoffs and they make some noise there, there's just so much behind the scenes that you just know that's just been going on.
And the thing is, too, is this will be my final point on this, but I was intrigued to see how Carson Wentz would react to an LCL surgery 9 months removed. I am really just as a spectator enthralled with
2 years away.
Yeah, enthralled with the idea of him potentially 21 months later being able to recover from that, being able to recover from back. This kid is going to light the world on fire when he gets the opportunity.
He almost might He probably shouldn't be eligible for it, but he might win comeback player of the year just because the narrative, the narrative of him has changed so drastically that it'll be like he's coming back, but this is just what he was the whole time. There's probably somebody there's a billion guys who tore their ACL this year, so there'll be somebody, but it's just around here, it just feels like he needs to prove himself again for some reason when he was the golden boy this time last year. So,
so I think it comes down to how we always say. Let's say Nick Foles has a big performance, and the Nick Foles haters go, "Oh, well, they're playing like the 5-11 team." You can't control who you play, but you also can't control your body either. And people can say that Wentz hasn't played in big games. He hasn't had the opportunity to really. I mean, Dallas is the biggest game of his career, and that was not. But we learned he
didn't hurt his back either that game or before it. Yeah,
right. And he had a monumentous fourth quarter. So again.
Monumental. You combine momentous and monumental. That was impressive, actually. I like that word. Monumentous.
Yeah, tremendous. But anyway, speaking of injuries, he's not going to play in this game, as you alluded to earlier. Nick Foles will get the start against Houston.
We'll get into the preview stuff in a bit.
Right. So let's talk about injuries, because we're recording this before the injury report comes out, as we always do on Fridays.
We'll say Fletcher Cox practiced today, Alshon Jeffrey practiced today. Both of them hadn't practiced this week.
Jake Elliott as well.
Jake Elliott. Alshon and Jake Elliott were just sick. It sounded like there was a bug going around. I think they're fine. Fletcher Cox, it was rest. He hurt his hip last game, and he went back in pretty quickly. Michael Bennett actually practiced this week, but he's done that for the last month, really.
Yeah, I'm not
he's great on. I mean, that's his career in a nutshell. He's a guy that likes to rest, and he's earned that right. I wrote a big story about him today because he's just been remarkable. We can talk about him later, but Sidney Jones, I imagine, won't play. Isaac Seumalo probably won't play,
and you know what? They're okay with that.
Wiz played pretty well last week.
Played well.
He was bad the rest of the season, but he was good last week. It seems like Jordan Hicks will be back. Timmy Jernigan, he's probably 50-50, I would say. He's been limited all week.
Just from the sounds of Doug Peterson's press conference, I've got a vibe that he's, at worst, going to be questionable for this game.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think...
Am I missing somebody? I feel like there was somebody else who hasn't been practicing that probably wasn't going to play.
Well, Cam Johnson has been limited throughout. DJ Alexander had a hamstring. He was downgraded did not practice yesterday. But yeah, I mean, Look, this team's going to be banged up for the rest of the year. I think they've proven to be pretty resilient. As long as Avonte Maddox is out there, I think they're fine. You know I mean, like, that's what it comes down to. If Michael Bennett, Avonte Maddox, Fletcher Cox, those guys, the meat of this defense, as it were. Like, Jordan Hicks, look, let's talk about Jordan Hicks. Jordan Hicks.
It's an interesting discussion, yeah.
Yeah, so Jordan Hicks, we've said it before, has not played as well as he has in the past. He hasn't been the playmaker he used to be. I think Nigel Bradham's better in that role.
It's an interesting conversation because, on one hand, Nigel has played better as a middle linebacker,
correct,
and Camus Grugier-Hill has played pretty well the last few weeks, but also Nate Gary's kind of a liability, and you'd rather Hicks. So I'm interested to see how they do this because, like, what's working is Nigel Bradham in the middle right now, and so I wonder if they ease Hicks back in, if they maybe try him at the other linebacker spot. Like, it probably won't. By the way Doug was talking about it, it didn't sound like they were going to change much up in terms of Hicks's role, but I don't know. I mean, you should be going with they go with the hot hand at running back all the time. I think they should apply that to linebacker because the linebackers have played way better the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I think so Hicks started his career as a weak side linebacker, so I
forgot about that.
think he'd be fine outside. I think Camus, who played Sam in week 1 with Nigel being suspended, I think
that's right.
That's also another consideration. Look, this linebacker group, whatever you want to say, is pretty average.
Yeah.
They're not, even with Hicks, they're not.
Yeah.
I don't think Hicks moves the needle at all at this point in his career just because he's so oft injured, and you also don't know how he's going to recover from a calf injury.
Like they don't have Luke Kuechly, Leighton Vander Esch. Like, they don't have, like, that caliber of talent, but they have a bunch of, like, okay guys.
Dare I say it? A Sean Lee? I don't know how they win games.
I mean, shoot, Darius Leonard. Like, all these rookies are, like, falling in the draft, and I mean, Eagles just don't draft linebackers is the reality.
It's
but
Napoleonism. Which I could have a conversation about for hours. But
which is funny because Leonard went to the Colts where Napoleon spent most of his career after he was gone, yeah.
Well, now they have a good GM in Chris Robinson. But anyway, so I think that him coming back is kind of like I don't mean to Darren Sproles him. I don't want to say he's a non-factor.
Who, Hicks?
Hicks, yeah, but I don't think it moves the needle either way. I'd like to have him have an extra week of rest and have him for that Redskins game.
Considering his history with that calf injury, like, it probably would be better served to sit out another week. But the fact that I wonder if they had lost last week and they look like they're probably not going to make the playoffs going into this game, I wonder if they just shut him down.
Yeah, that would have made sense. Like,
or if he, like, personally takes, like, or his agent, is like, hey, we'd rather not risk it because he had some issues with his calf.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the outlook would be.
It's his contract year, and he has an injury-prone tag. He's missed 4 games this year, I believe, and he didn't look like himself for a bunch of others. So, I mean, I don't know how high his value is going into this offseason. Linebackers don't really get huge contracts anymore, especially not inside linebackers.
Yeah, he's got a bit of a Stu Bradley sort of...
So, it wouldn't shock me if he came back here on a cheap one-year prove-it type deal, if the Eagles want to bring him back.
Sure. The other guy we talked about, Tim Jernigan, I do think he would be a huge plus for this team. I thought Trayvon Hester and Bruce Hector played their best games as the Eagles against the Rams. I also thought Haloti Ngata played relatively well. That said, Tim Jernigan's a better player than all 3 of them put together, and it'd be nice to kind of see him close out here,
they've got 19 snaps for the $11 million they pay him or whatever.
Right. So, it's
almost
nice
$1 million per snap.
It's nice to see that return on investment, but if he's ready to go, you want all hands on deck. This Texans game's huge. I mean, if you thought the Rams game was huge, it's just as huge, if not bigger.
Him especially, we've talked a lot about their struggles kind of stopping mobile quarterbacks this year, and Deshaun Watson's as good as any at avoiding rush. And you need a defensive line to get off their blocks and swallow up the blockers and kind of create space for the linebackers in the secondary. So that him being, even he probably isn't himself anyway, but if he can get 20 snaps, that helps a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime you can have a rotation outside of 3 players, the more
when one of them is like 90 years old,
So moving on from injuries, you want to get into matchups?
Yeah, let's get into there because there's some. This is like one of the more interesting like mano-y-manos, I feel like, because there's a lot of like interesting player vs. player. Like, let's start with probably the biggest one, or at least the biggest name one would be Lane Johnson versus J.J. Watt.
Yeah, I mean this
is a battle of who many believe to be the or one of the best right tackles versus who many believe to be the best defensive player in the NFL in J.J. Watt, and he hasn't lost a step. He has like almost 15 sacks this year. He can do everything. He can move inside if he has to. Like the best tackles can't block him, so it's going to be interesting because it's not only him. He frees up space for Jadeveon Clowney, who's a freak of nature also. So that matchup is going to be very important.
Well, we talked about last week speed to power with Aaron Donald. J.J. Watt's kind of in a similar boat at a different position, and I think this will be a really good test for Lane Johnson. Lane seems healthy now. He's been playing very well. Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. The matchup that I'm more concerned about is Jadeveon Clowney versus anybody on the left side.
Yeah.
Because
especially if Peters is...
Well, here's the thing. They like to move him inside. They like to disguise the way he rushes. Him versus Wisniewski one-on-one is a terrible matchup. I mean, we've also seen guys get inside on Jason Peters, and that's kind of not a great look.
He has played pretty well the last couple of weeks, we should say.
Yeah, he has. But
he had like a couple slip-ups a couple weeks ago, but I mean, when you only have 2 out of 2 games, that's pretty good. But this is a different animal.
He's going up against a Pro Bowl pass rusher.
I mean, Jadeveon Clowney's a freak. Like, that's why he was the number 1 overall pick a couple years ago.
For sure. And I mean, he's not a guy that gets a ton of sack numbers, but he's a guy that can pressure a quarterback pretty well. Also, looking at the defense, Justin Reed out of Stanford, the rookie, that guy's got some playmaking ability. If Nick Foles is throwing up some of those like Jeffrey bombs, I don't know how many of those will be completed to Jeffrey.
I wanted the Eagles to draft Justin Reed. He was like one of my favorite safeties in his last draft.
Yeah, he's
they wound up picking Goddard, which worked out, but yeah. I really liked Reed, and he fell farther than I thought he would too.
I used to get concerned with like Stanford DBs because they're slow. And
he's pretty fast, though, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. But historically, Ed Reynolds was terrible. Quentin Meeks, the slowest corner you've ever seen. Great ball skills, really technically sound. Ended up going undrafted. Now he's playing for the Jaguars. Had a good game against Zack, actually. But again, I think Justin Reed's kind of a liability for the Eagles in that he can make plays on the ball. And this Texans secondary is very good at... the secondary and the linebackers are very good at getting yards after the interception. If they get open field opportunities, they've already got 3 touchdowns off of interceptions this year. Zach Cunningham, a really, really good linebacker who's basically a big safety.
Their front 7 is among the best in the NFL.
Right. I mean,
secondary leaves a little more to be desired.
Their red zone's terrible, though. Their red zone defense is not very good. And I think they ranked 30th.
That probably comes down to the secondary, honestly. Yeah.
Right. I mean, Aaron Colvin,
Kareem Jackson, I believe, is there.
Kareem Jackson's
top corner.
Well, he's playing free safety.
Oh, is he?
At times, yeah, he's playing free and strong. And then you've got Joshua Johnson, and then who's the guy that took over for Kevin Jackson? You got Andre Hall out there. They're a guy, they have a lot of cornerback pieces, but again, I think Jonathan Joseph. That's who I meant. Joshua
the
Jackson.
veteran, yeah. That's the Packers guy.
Yeah. So they do have some age back there. They've got some experience. They've got guys that can make plays on the ball. The thing is they're all kind of smaller, and I think that plays into the Alshon Jeffrey factor. The Zach Ertz. I think Dallas Goedert's going to be huge in the red zone in this game because I think he can do things against Reed and against Kareem. And, I think this is a difficult matchup, but also when you look at the offensive line, this is the Super Bowl winning offensive line.
Playing like it, too.
Playing like it. If Nick Foles plays like he did against the Rams, they're going to win this game.
Yeah. I mean, if there's ever a team that's hard to move the ball up the field on, it's probably this one just because of that front 7. But if the offensive line does its job, and maybe Josh Adams plays a little better than he did last week. I know Smallwood played well last week, but ideally he's not getting 10 carries every week, so we'll see how that plays out. But matchup on the other side.
Oh, before you get to that,
sure.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
You actually brought up the key point that I wanted to make and completely blanked on it. They do really need to run the ball in this game.
Yes.
You're going to want a lot of delayed handoffs. I count the screen game as part of the running game. You're going to want some screens. This defensive front is extremely aggressive.
Use Sproles more this game.
Yeah, this is a Sproles game for sure. I think Josh
Make
Adams...
him your goal line back. I know we talked about it, but just like, I know Doug kind of deflected a question about how Josh Adams has struggled in that area and said it's not just him, blah, blah, blah. But, like, I don't think his skill set is suited to it. Like, I know he's big, but he's big, but he's not like the same kind of big. He's tall.
Mm-hmm. He's a tall guy. And he's a chunk guy. And chunk guys typically get chunks when there's space.
Like, LeGarrette Blount wasn't really their goal line back last year. Like, think about it like that. Like, Corey Clement was their main goal line back.
Exactly. But you also, when you have a goal line back, too, you want the ability to say, hey, we could pass it at a
yeah.
And so when you have
it's like different than, like, the old school where it was, like, Jerome Bettis or Brandon Jacobs where they were just, like, big guys.
Well, yeah, and more so because of philosophy, right? So if you have a guy in the backfield and you know he's terrible in pass protection, well, he's not terrible, but he's not very good in pass protection. You know he's not really using.
Talking about Josh Adams.
Yeah. So if Josh Adams is in the backfield, I'm automatically thinking, okay, this is a run.
Yeah, you never think he's going to go out for a pass.
Yeah, you don't think he's going to go out for a pass. You don't think he's going to pass pro.
And it limits what you can do a little bit.
Right, and that's why you're able to key in on that. That's why, in a broader sense, that's why it makes more sense to use somebody
Unless you were going to do like a QB sneak up the middle. That's the only... But, yeah, Sproles. That's why Sproles makes the most sense. There may be Smallwood, but he's not a great runner. Mm-hmm. So,
and I also think running Josh Adams... out of shotgun is not necessarily beneficial in a short yardage situation.
I agree.
So, moving on, you want to talk about the
side
of the ball?
So, sorry about that. The big matchup, obviously, DeAndre Hopkins, who has the best hands in the NFL. Mm-hmm. I don't even know if that's a debate. Like, he's ridiculous.
Well, Alshon Jeffrey would debate him, but yes, I agree with you. Yeah.
Okay, Alshon, calm down. Okay, but I would say probably Rasul Douglas on him.
Yeah, that's what I would do.
Assuming that, I mean, Rasul had a really good game last week, but this is a different. He's never covered a guy like this.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a situation where
we'll find out how good Rasul Douglas is this week.
Right, and I think they like playing sides. This is not a matchup for that. You're down to your fourth and fifth corners. Like, you don't need to do that. Avonte Maddox, as great as he played against the Rams, and he
fantastic.
Played great.
He's too small.
He's also 5'9".
Yeah.
And, DeAndre Hopkins has a similar skill set to Alshon Jeffrey. He's a little bit faster, but jump balls, leaping for catches,
he can catch in traffic, too.
Yeah, he can do everything. He's phenomenal. But
that's also why Rasul is a good fit against him, because you need someone who's good at tackling on a guy like that, because he's going to come down with the ball, so you need to bring him down.
Right. And Maddox is good with tackling. The issue is that, look, he's going to have his 10 catches a game. You want to limit the yards after the catch. And like you said, Rasul's more of a sure tackler. Just from a size perspective, he's physical. If you're in the red zone, you definitely want Rasul on him. You want Rasul to trail him. Because on the other side, you have Will Fuller, and
he's out.
Not Will Fuller.
They have Kiki Cutie.
Yeah.
And DeAndre Carter's playing quite a bit for them, actually.
Right, but Kiki, that's the guy you want. Sorry, I almost pulled a Stephen A. Smith.
Well, and Demaryius Thomas they also have. But.
Yeah, Demaryius Thomas. But Demaryius Thomas is a guy.
He's more of like a possession guy.
You can put Malcolm on.
He hasn't really done much for them. Yeah,
they don't really use their tight ends all that often.
No.
So you can put Malcolm on Demaryius. You can put. I think Trayvon will be fine on him. You can move guys around. I'm not really worried about that. Hopkins is going to eat. You just got to limit his portions.
I kind of think of it like how they defended Julio Jones in week 1. Mm-hmm. He had like 10 catches for like 150 yards, but it was all like 10-yard catches.
Right. Jim Schwartz.
Even if it was down the field, they were tackling him right away, and he never scored that game.
Right. Jim Schwartz's philosophy is it's fine if you allow some chunk yardage, just don't let him in the end zone. And I think you want them to settle for field goals in this game. And they will get into the red zone pretty frequently.
Their kicker is one of the best in the league, Kaye Fairbairn from UCLA.
Yeah, he's playing pretty well. I think didn't he get nominated for the Pro Bowl?
Yeah, I believe he had like 6 field goals or something a week or two ago.
Yeah, so again, I think with the DeAndre thing this isn't a situation where you say, hey, let everybody else try to beat us. It's cool, you go in knowing DeAndre's going to do his thing, but a wide receiver can't beat us by himself unless he's Amari Cooper, because that's what happened. So Lamar Miller is dealing with an injury.
And he's kind of anyway.
I mean, he's having a good year, but that said, you're taking away something extra from this defense, from this offense, and I think that's important. If he doesn't play, that could be a big deal, especially in a
So what,
coldish,
Alfred Blue is their backup, right?
Yeah, in a coldish game, I think you're going to want to run the ball. I don't know if Watson's played in a game this cold in a while, just because he went down early in the season last year, and now you're in Philly, and I believe it's supposed to be in the mid 40s. So a dome team coming in, whatever, you can make the weather stuff. Watson, got to set the edge.
Yeah.
This is a big game for Chris Long and Michael Bennett and Brandon Graham. I think if you're Nigel Bradham, you need to know where you are at all times. Camus needs to know where he is at all times. I'm fascinated with how this defense plans to shut him down, because you're realistically going to be covering for a while. That's part of the reason why Hopkins has been able to dominate is, it's not just the simple, hey, I'm going to make a cut and he's going to throw in the thing. Watson will get knocked out of the pocket and do the Wentz magic and stuff, and he has one of the strongest arms on the run you'll see. So, look, this is going to be a tough matchup, as we've said, not to get too into the X's and O's, but when you're looking at, you've got to hit him. You've got to hit him. You've got to figure out a way to keep him contained. I don't want him running. I don't. So I've got to either spy on him, or I need to make sure that this will not be a game where they blitz a lot, I don't think. I think you have to have that guy that's there, making sure that he doesn't run for a gajillion yards.
The funny thing about the blitzing is, they blitzed a lot relative to what they normally. Jim Schwartz made a joke about it in his press conference this week. I think they blitzed 7 or 8 or 9 times or something last week. He's like, that's a lot relative to what we normally do.
Yeah,
but
it's not really a lot.
That's not a lot. They played 60-something snaps, I think, on defense last week. So they just don't blitz that much. It's funny when you think about the Jim Johnson days when blitzing was their game. Mm-hmm. It's just so funny how much different Jim Schwartz's philosophy is.
So let's get into Alshon. Okay. Alshon had a great game. He's
fantastic, yeah. He made the plays. A lot of them weren't even great throws.
Since 2010, I believe he had the 8th most receiving yards in a game for an Eagles wide receiver. I mean, Maclin and Deshaun obviously were the other guys. Yeah. So he had 160 yards, 8 targets, 8 catches. That's impressive, man.
8 out of 8?
Making plays. He needs to take advantage of the size factor in this game. I think he could be huge in the red zone. Zach Ertz, we didn't see get involved very often with Nick Foles at quarterback in this game, but he did target him a ton in Tampa. He targeted him a lot in Atlanta.
Though Alshon wasn't in those games, to be fair. But
right.
Yes.
But, I think Nick Foles and Alshon clearly have a chemistry. Nick and Alshon are both basketball players at heart.
Yeah. With the Ertz thing, to be fair, he even said they clearly schemed for him.
And teams are going to do that down the stretch. They know that they cannot let Ertz beat them, or it can be a problem. What I want to say is, I don't think Carson was targeting Ertz too much. If it's a proven success factor or whatever, do I think he missed plays because Ertz was probably the safest option? Sure. But sometimes you have to play conservative.
Well, I think that, at least this season, that's probably the biggest difference between Foles and Wentz, is when, maybe there's a play that you probably shouldn't be trying as a quarterback, but you want to take a risk to try and get a big play. Foles kind of goes for it every time, like you saw on the play where Nelson Aguilar and Jeffrey came back. I'm pretty sure Ertz was open also. So you would think Wentz would probably dump that off to Ertz in that same situation, whereas Foles just heaving it up and hoping for the best. Those are two different strategies, and they both have their merit. But when it works out with Foles, you get this awesome thing happening. So
yeah, and I think they'll be a little bit more conservative in this game. I think the Texans have guys that can make plays on the ball. Not that the Rams didn't, but I think this is a better safety group. I think this is a bit better of a secondary. And, for Nick, he needs to be sharp. You can say all you want about him not being not scoring touchdowns in the game against the Rams. He was the catalyst for all 3 touchdown scoring drives. And I think with Nick, he's got to find consistency. He's got to be able to lead them early. I think if they can get off to a really hot start, they're going to win this game. I think whoever is the first to score 10 points or get in the double digits is going to be the team that ultimately wins this game.
So ultimately, who do you think is the first team that gets double digits and wins this game?
I think it will be the Houston Texans, unfortunately. I think this is going to be a very close game. I do think the Vikings are going to win against the Lions. I think this is a letdown game. You remember, this team's only won 2 games once in a row this season. I agree with Doug Peterson's let's ease back, let's keep him fresh strategy, but there's a lot of guys they need to keep fresh, and that's my concern. I felt weird making this pick because I do think the Eagles have a huge shot of winning this game. 28-26 is what I kind of came up with from a Texans win. Also, if you're a fan that's like, oh, well, he's doing this because he was wrong about the Rams game, and so hopefully they win this game. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, I think it'll be fun either way.
So I've been wrong pretty much every week. So
Terrific.
Eagles fans,
so they're going to lose this game.
Yes. Spoiler alert: I have the Eagles winning. I feel kind of the same way as you. I just kind of, I don't know, just something about that Rams game. I said this was that was the first game where I felt like they played like they looked last year. Like that felt like the first 2017 performance. Their defense was stellar. I think a lot of it will come down to if the defense can do that again, which is no guarantee. The Texans are tough to stop. And if Nick Foles can be good. He doesn't need to be amazing. Like, that's just the reality. He doesn't have to be amazing for them to win.
Something that's scary about this, the Houston Texans have never beat the Eagles. The Eagles are 4-0 against the Houston Texans. Yikes.
When was the last time they played, though?
They played when Nick Foles broke his collarbone.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
So he might have...
14?
I mean, does that mean Nate Sudfeld's going to be playing tomorrow? Sunday?
I mean, if history repeats itself, we've seen it. Anyway.
But I have Eagles 27, Texans 24. And real quick, let's just talk about like what that means playoff-wise. So the Vikings are going to be playing the Lions this week. Mm-hmm. They should win that one. I mean, the Vikings have had a weird season. And the NFL, there's been so much weird stuff happening this year. Like, I know we probably say this every year, but and usually Week 15 is always like one of the weirder ones, and it was last week. But the Vikings should beat the Lions, so that puts... They're going to be playing at the same time as the Eagles, by the way, so there'll be some scoreboard watching. So if they both win, then next week the Eagles will have to win and the Vikings will have to lose for the Eagles to get in the playoffs, depending on what happens with the Seahawks, who I forget who they played this week, but they're on Sunday night.
They play
somebody... 49ers?
No. Don't they play the Colts?
Let me look real quick. But... and then I think the Redskins play on Saturday also. And the Redskins play on Saturday. So if the Redskins win, they'll technically be ahead of the Eagles in the standings, even though the Eagles have the tiebreaker. But then if the Eagles lost, then they'd be a game behind. They do have the tiebreaker, so that helps. But I mean, how are you feeling about the playoff picture going into this week? And I mean, do you think it's going to come down to Week 17? I should say.
If the Eagles win, then it will, inevitably come down to Week 17. If the Eagles win this game, I think...
Oh, they play the Seahawks play the Chiefs, actually.
Right, that's what it was.
I mean, the Seahawks have been another strange team this year where they have played up to good opponents and down to bad... They haven't played as well as they should against bad teams. So if they lose, the Vikings win, the Eagles win, they're still... I mean, Eagles lose, there's still like a chance they can get in there.
Yeah.
It's definitely less, but there's a chance.
Ideally, what you want... So if the Eagles win this game and the Vikings lose, the Eagles are going... Basically... Yeah, unless they bomb against the Redskins, they're going to go to the playoffs. So that's really what you want to be rooting for. I do think the Vikings beat the Lions. I think the Seahawks lose to the Chiefs. And I think the Eagles lose to the Texans. That said, if the Eagles do beat the Texans and that happens, Week 17 is going to be very interesting because all they need is for either Seattle or Minnesota to lose and them to win. And I think that is a good thing. Now... The Cowboys...
Hey, if they lose out,
that'll be interesting as well. So I think...
Hey, Kamugrja Hill, his prophecy would come true.
Week 17 is going to be interesting, man. It's going to be interesting, and I think...
Hey, we're going to be scoreboard watching this week, and that's kind of fun.
Yeah, that is kind of fun. And I think when you look at this season as a whole, let's say they go 9-7 and don't make the playoffs, where's your head at?
You're feeling... I think it's just better. I know momentum doesn't really carry from season to season, as you saw from winning the Super Bowl. But you go into the offseason feeling better about the team, at least. I mean, we'll see like how Howie Roseman feels about it. Like if he blows the roster up, which he could. There's a lot of like avenues to like change this roster drastically, and he might have to because they don't have any money. They're over the cap. Once they decline Foles' option, which seems inevitable, they go under technically, but then you still have like all these contracts to deal with and like a lot of decisions to make. Jason Peters and Rodney McLeod, and like there's just so much out there. It'll just be interesting to see like how Howie Roseman views how the season went. I think you'll learn that based on like how he approaches the offseason and like what kind of guys he drafts, whether he targets like big names or whether he's comfortable. All right, we went 9-7 with Josh Adams at running back. We can just get another complimentary piece. Like I like Avonte Maddox at safety. We don't need to get any other corners. Let's just focus on getting depth at certain positions. Like it'll just be interesting to see how he views it. But yeah, I think if you go in the offseason 9-7, you feel way better than when they were certainly, what were they, 4-7 or whatever it was, like whatever their worst record was.
Yeah, I think they were 4-6. Yeah, because then they.
So at that point, we're all saying everything's over. They stink. So you go into the offseason. The issue will be we'll hear the Nick Foles-Carson Wentz thing all summer, which is going to get old real fast. But there's a lot of optimism to take out of this. We've talked about Cre'Veon LeBlanc. He's kind of like a guy that late in the season has kind of established that he deserves to be around here. Josh Adams, like there's a lot of these young guys who have kind of emerged, which has kind of been the benefit of the injuries, weirdly.
Yeah, I mean, I think if this is like your setback year and then you fire out the gate the next couple of years, I think you're in pretty good shape. But what I'll say is this. The Eagles deserve to be in the position that they're in right now.
Yeah, they put themselves in this position.
They put themselves in this position. Now you just have to hope that the Lions or the Bears have something to play for, whether it's playing spoiler or trying to get that second seed. Now, here's what you also want to look for. You want the Rams to win this week, and maybe for the Bears to lose, because you want the Bears to be trying to get that second seed right now. But I think that'll do it for us.
Yeah, we'll have our post-game pod on Sunday. Subscribe if you don't already. We're on all the apps. Leave us some comments, and thanks for listening, guys.